look nice with that tie. You look really professional.
Hey, I got stuff for you guys today.
Good Dale.
You look like a New York lawyer. I don't think that's good.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't know if y'all are still there or not, but it sounds like there's a mute going on. Got quiet.
We're still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a quorum? Have you got 5 members?
No, sir, we do.
Mr. Medlin, I've been informed one of our board members is running just a few minutes late, and we'll give him an opportunity to get here.
All right, thank you. And the video's not working, your camera, so I don't see you, which is, that's okay. I'll be able to hear you, but just letting you know.
Power glitch this afternoon. It's, okay,
Oh, there you are.
all right.
Okay, if everyone's ready, we'll get started. Madam Clerk, do we have all our recording devices on? We're ready to go?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we certainly do.
Okay, this will be the July 22nd, 2021 Planning Board meeting. If we would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag. of the United States.
Okay, our first item of business is to review and adopt the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Ms. Mark Nadell, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and adopt it.
Second.
Okay, we'll vote. Mr. Nadell,
Aye.
Mr. Hamel,
Aye.
Mr. Angel,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Approval of minutes, June 24th, 2021. Has everyone had an opportunity to review these draft minutes? Okay. I have a issue on page 3, the bottom paragraph. I think there's something here that needs to be clarified. I'd like to make it a little clearer that Mr. Medlin stated that there was no way to restrict the access to those 56 lots. We can continue these or try to make a correction here on the fly. What's the board's preference?
What correction are you looking for, Mr. Chairman?
What I had hoped when I asked this question is Mr. Medlin would be able to provide us with some opportunity to enter into an agreement with Forsyth County to enforce the same limit that any other property in Stokesdale would be bound to follow so far as the 50 lot rule. And so I asked the question, there's any way the planning board can put a restriction on this property to limit access to 56 lots? And the response in the minutes are that Mr. Medlin stated this is correct.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Medlin. I agree with you. I think my response either was or should have been that no, at that meeting, and at that point, you could not do that type of restriction. So that, yeah, I agreed to have that clarified as such.
Okay. Mr. Medlin, you think it would be okay to change this to Mr. Medlin stated that there was no way to apply such a restriction?
Yeah, just that you could not, that the planning board could not do such a restriction, correct?
Well, Mr. Medlin, do you want to take a shot at providing the exact verbiage to the clerk so we can go ahead and approve these? Have you got them in front of you?
I do not, but based on the question you said, then I think it's appropriate that says Mr. Medlin answered that it was not possible to limit, to put that kind of, let's see, Mr. Medlin said it was not possible to put such a limit in place by the planning board. Is that sufficient?
Ms. Martin is typing away over here. I think she's going to have it in a second. You want to read it to us?
Mr. Medlin stated that there was wait, I gotta read my, can't even read my own writing here. Mr. Medlin stated that it was not possible to limit, I got too many limits in here. Mr. Medlin stated that it was not possible to put such a limit in place by the planning board.
Okay, sounds good to me. I'll make a motion that we approve the, let me be sure I get the right date
Chairman,
here.
I've got one correction I'd like to mention. If we go up 2 paragraphs, Ms. Barton, when it states that I brought up this multiple zoning question, I think it was, I didn't have the knowledge, I think it was where Mr. Bass noted that multiple zones are not common, instead of me making that comment.
How do you wanna change that?
Yes.
Ms. Martin, do you want to clarify that for the record, the change Mr. Angel just asked for?
Well, give me some language that you'd like to see in there.
It was actually just where you had Mr. Bruce, it just needs to be Mr. Bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, right here.
I posed a question and that was his comment back.
Okay. Correction noted.
Ms. Martin, you want to read it to us?
You want me to read the whole paragraph?
Just the change you inserted will be fine.
Well, if he just wants to change Mr. Bass to Mr. Bruce to Mr. Bass, 1, 2, 3, fourth sentence down, Mr. Bass noted that the multiple zones are not common. Is that the sentence you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bass noted, instead of Mr. Bruce noted, that the multiple zones are not common, but does occur from time to time.
Okay, good enough then. All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the June 24th, 2021 Stokesdale Planning Board minutes with the corrections.
Bruce Angel seconds that.
Okay, anybody got any questions? We'll vote. Mr. Nadell?
Aye.
Mr. Hamel?
Aye.
Mr. Angel?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Let's see. That gets us to our first case. Rezoning case 21-06 STPL-05566, located at 6905 US Highway 158. Mr. Bass, do you have a staff report for us?
I'm sorry. What was the zoning case that you noted?
2106 STPL 05566.
Okay, yeah. I would like to make a correction on the staff report based on that case. It has the wrong case number on it. The correction should read 21-0-STPL.
Mr. Basket, can you grab that speaker and speak into it?
Sorry. Yes, I would like to make a correction to the staff report, to the case number on the staff report. Change it from change the last 4 digits from 01727 to 01727. 0556.
70556.
Yeah, change the last four digits to 05566 as reflected on the application.
Well, I've got paperwork here with yet another number on it. Hold on a second. Okay, 05566, it's what's on our agenda. And you're saying the correct number is 21-06-STPL-01727?
No, the correct number is 05566. The staff report should correct the staff number to
Okay,
reflect that.
I'm sorry, you said that. I'll catch up in a minute.
I apologize for that.
Okay, do you have a staff report for us, Mr.
Yes, sir. Addressing the property specific, the site is located on the south side of North Carolina Highway 158, approximately 400 feet west of Ellison Road intersection, Guilford County Tax Parcel 150698. This is a request to rezone a portion of said property that fronts Ellison Road from highway business to RS30, single-family residential, approximately 8.82 acres of approximately 1.44 acres. The nature of the request, this is a request to rezone a portion of the property from HB to RS30, single-family. This request will rezone approximately 0.82 acres fronting Ellison Road and leave the remaining 0.6 acreage to highway business. The applicant is Lucy Wilson Joyner. Generally, the zoning description, RS30 residential single-family districts is intended for single-family residential development that allows major subdivisions, and any major subdivision will be required to connect to the Stokesdale public water system. The Highway Business District is intended to primarily accommodate retail services and distributive uses that are typically located on along thoroughfares. Character of the area has a mix of residential and commercial uses. Of those owned, HB subject property and the adjacent property north each have a non-conforming single-family dwelling. The existing land use on the portion of that's being rezoned is single-family residential. The portion facing Highway 158 is a vacant building. Surrounding uses are single-family residential, commercial, industrial, and industrial. Moving on to the land use analysis. The Stokesdale future land use plan is the element of the comprehensive plan that address land use. The plan designates the area for professional manufacturing corridor. The professional manufacturing corridor is planned to provide an area for the growth of office and light manufacturing services that are consistent with current uses. This corridor would start at the edge of the town core on Highway 158 and follow US 158 and terminate at the intersection of Highway 158 and US 220. The northern and southern borders of the professional manufacturing corridor are identical to the borders of the scenic corridor. This portion of US Highway 158 contains industrial, highway business, office, residential, and agricultural uses. No new industrial areas are proposed due to the number of areas currently zoned but undeveloped. Staff found that the proposed zoning, the zoning is consistent with the Stokesdale land use plan because the professional manufacturing corridor recognized that the corridor does contain existing residential uses. Staff recommend approval. The request is reasonable and in public interest because the professional manufacturing corridor recognizes that existing residential uses are located within the corridor. The parcel has an existing single-family dwelling as a non-conforming use and structure in the HB district, and the parent tract was subdivided into a 3-lot subdivision in 1988, and 2 of those lots at that time was under a residential zoning. 1 additional parcel can be divided from the tract and still qualify as a minor subdivision, and therefore would not require a connection to the Stokesdale water system per newly adopted standards of the Stokesdale Development Ordinance. Therefore, if approved, an amendment to the Stokesdale Future Land Use Plan would not be required. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this rezoning?
Anthony Ball, Lawn Surveying Company. Our office is in Madison, North Carolina. We were requested by Jerry Joyner to prepare this rezoning request and submit it. Just as a local flavor, you know, this is where Jerry lives, right behind Carter's Restaurant. The old motel that was built in the late 50s, early 60s would be on the residual part that would remain highway business. And then also his mother lives south in most of the remember the roundhouse. Lives on the southern lot. It was a 3-lot subdivision that was done in 1988 and approved by the county. We were able to meet the setbacks barely, but we are meeting all the setbacks of highway business and residential between the line between the motel, the old motel, and the house. So, any further technical questions or any other questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
Mr. Vaughn, you stated that you represented Jerry Joyner, but I assume that is by extension you also represent Lucy Joyner. She's the applicant. So just make sure there's no misunderstanding. Okay. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak in favor? Is there anyone online that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Is there anyone online that wants to oppose this rezoning? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, I'll make the motion. I make a motion that we approve this rezoning request in conformance with the staff report that's been presented. The staff recommends approval, and I believe it consistent with Stokesdale's land use plan, et cetera.
Mark Nadell, okay.
Mr. Hamel, second.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Questions, comments? Okay. Call the question, we'll vote. Mr. Nadell?
Aye.
Mr. Hamel?
Aye.
Mr. Angel?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Next case, Text amendment case 21-07 STPL-05973, warehouse self-storage as permitted use in GB and HB districts. Mr. Bass, do you have a report for us?
Just to note that this is yes, sir. This is Oliver Bass, Guilford County Planning. It's text amendment case 21-07 STPL-05973, warehouse self-storage as a permitted use in the GB and HB zoning districts. This is an amendment that was proposed at the town council meeting for Stokesdale. And the proposal was to eliminate the warehouse self-storage as a use permitted in the general business district and the highway business district. To achieve this purpose, the following amendment is being is being considered. A, amend section 4-3, table 4-3-1, permitted use schedule to remove warehouse self-storage as a use permitted in the GB and HB zoning district. Amend section 6-4 to remove subsection 6-4.91, warehouse self-storage development standards for general business and HB development standards associated with warehouse self-storage in the general business and highway business zoning district is currently relieved as stated below. If approved, self-storage warehomes will only be allowed in the LI and HI zoning districts. Applications submitted on or after the effective date of the amendment will be subject to the new regulations. Any conditionally zoned property will be subject to the regulations, subject to the approved conditions at the time it was approved. So basically, this is an amendment that being proposed by the town of Stokesdale. I would not be recommending in favor or against it. It's a policy decision by the town.
Very well.
However, with regards to plan consistency, I wanted to point out that one of the things you can look at is the vision statement and whether or not the proposed amendment, in your opinion, is supported by the vision statement that's included in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bass. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this text amendment?
Yes, my name is John Flynn. I live at 8133 Blues Creek Road. And as you know, over the past 4 or 5 months, we've had 2 rezoning cases up on Highway 68 near, I still call it Bethel Church Road, but near the shopping center. One by Homes Limited and the other by the corporation, I can't think of what it's storage. Okay. And the first case had been zoned conditional use highway business. And they inferred to the neighborhood when they had it rezoned that it was going to be for professional offices, like a doctor's office, accountant, attorney, somebody like that. And so they got, I believe, a unanimous vote on that. Well, they came back in and asked for to be allowed to put mini storage in there. And it is permitted in highway business with design standards. But those design standards are simply, it has to be less than 5 acres. Now, if you want to work around rules, all you got to do, you got a 10-acre tract, cut it into 2 tracts of 5 acres or less, put it 2 different corporations, and come back and you can have 2 zoning requests. And then we had, in his case, on the other side of Paul River, Bethel Church Road, it was a straight highway business zoning. And he made it very clear that his intended purpose was for mini storage. But our attorney, and I had some concerns about that, but the attorney made it a point. You're not looking at this as a mini storage zoning, you're looking at it as a so, you know, we've given it to one, we have to give it to both. I believe the original intent of our long-range land use plan and our zoning was to limit mini storage to light industrial or heavy industrial. And this corridor we had for that designated was along 158, say from Stokesdale School to town limits. I believe that is a more appropriate zone, light industrial, because to me, that's exactly what this mini storages are. I don't think they mix very well with residential. And as you saw in the case that backed up to Harbor Run, we had a number of people that objected. Now, I'm a proponent of land use property rights, but I think there's a place for everything. And I think the appropriate place for mini storage would be in light industrial. Now, I want to make sure that, and Oliver confirmed that these two cases that have been approved are grandfathered in, that they will be allowed to go forward with the zoning that they have. I just think that 10 acres up there roughly that we've approved on those two is enough mini storage for 68. And I think if you don't make this change, people are just going to continue to come in with just a straight highway business or general business owning request, and they could put mini storage. And I think enough's enough. I just want to make that change. I think that's consistent with most towns. I don't think Oak Ridge or Somerville have any mini storage. And that's the reason I brought it. They always say if you don't like the law, change it. That's exactly what I'm trying to do.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Is there anyone online that would wish to speak in favor of this text amendment? Is anyone that wishes to oppose this text amendment?
Can you be neutral?
Certainly.
I'm not standing here to oppose the town, okay? I'm Cecil Little, my address is 2006 Guilford College Road, Jamestown, 27282. Good to appear before you gentlemen another time. Didn't plan to be back here that quickly, but I found myself here. Not here to say that you should or should not do this text amendment. I do, however, wish to express my concern about being grandfathered legally. I'm not an attorney. I don't like attorneys, and I don't like those things that they deal with sometimes. But today, this morning, I called my attorney just to understand where we are in this project on 68 that was rezoned at the last council.
Excuse me a moment. Ms. Martin, is Mr. Little's mic on?
Is that better?
The light's on now.
Is that better?
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry. Do I need to repeat anything that I said maybe, or?
Up to you.
Okay,
We'll give you time for a technical difficulty.
thank you. Just would like to have some kind of legal reassurance that we're going to be okay there. Because my attorney said, and I called him just simply to get clarification legally of where we would stand in this matter. Because the first time I heard of this, I was told that in order to be able to be considered under the zoning that we were zoned for at the time, we would have to submit a site plan. And if we didn't get it submitted by the time that the council takes this action, we would be under the new rules, which means there would not be a self-storage allowed there. So in other words, our rezoning would be totally in vain. And we've closed on the property, spent money, and would like to do it. So I'm not opposing what your text amendment. I'm neither for it nor against it. I'm for it's good for Stokesdale and AAA storage. I just want to be sure that something isn't going to pop up after the fact of the town council's meeting, and we haven't come to you and voiced our feelings and thoughts and asked for help on that. And that's all we're saying. Now, the attorney said, well, maybe they'll push the decision back for several months. Or maybe in the wording of their text amendment, they'll put some dates there, like from the date of that town council meeting until 6 months down the road or something, just enough time to give us the ability to complete a site plan. Because they take a lot of time and pretty substantial amount of money to get them created. We do have services of a surveyor involved right now, and he's either working this week or next week, which he is step one, which the engineer that draws a site plan can't begin until the survey turns in a survey. And so that is going to be 2 to 3 weeks, and the town council meets in a couple of weeks, and there we are. So is there any way that the town could give us assurance other than the fact of grandfather clause, which my attorney says is a very iffy situation for us to find ourselves in later?
I have a question, just to answer that. The text change here talks about applications submitted after we go through this process. Your application's already been processed and approved. So your application, based on the way I read this amendment change, is already in the books. It's done. And this should have no effect on that whatsoever. Am I incorrect? As I'm reading this, it's pretty straightforward. And I think John had mentioned the same thing, that they're grandfathered in. So
Yeah.
it's pretty clear that since you've already gone through the process of the planning board plus the town council who's approved it,
Right.
you're beyond, you're not going to be you're not filing another, unless some reason you decide to pull back and start all over again. And I don't see that happening.
May I clarify, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Bass.
Yes. Basically, once a rezoning does not establish any vesting, unless it's a conditional zone, because conditional zoning of itself is a zoning provision. But this was a straight rezoning, so they'll be subject to the regulations of the Stokesdale Development Ordinance at the time when a site plan has been submitted, meaning they paid the fees and they have a completed site plan that has been submitted to the town. So that's when the vesting start. I mean, there may be some vesting in terms of the amount of substantial expenses would be another way to establish, but by ordinance, vesting is not established unless there's an approved site plan, building permit, preliminary plat, subdivision, those type of development applications.
Okay.
So his concerns are warranted based on that.
Okay.
Well, yes, if, depending on when he submitted site plan, he'll be subject to the ordinance in place at the time of approval. I mean, at the time, ordinance in effect when the site plan is submitted.
That was what we understood, and that's what my attorney understood, and that's why I'm here, is because that is a chronological impossibility at this point. So our rezoning for our purpose would become useless if that is the case, if what Mr. Bass says is the case.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification, Oliver.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Let's see if anyone else wants to speak. Is anyone else here that wants to speak regarding this text amendment particularly opposed? Is there anyone online that wants to speak regarding this text amendment? Go ahead, Mr. Flint.
certainly don't want to put Mr. Little's project at risk. He came in good faith, we voted in good faith, and I want to honor that. And so if you want to discuss this and we can put an effective date 30 days or 15 days after his site plan is approved, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to close the door so we don't get a lot more. But I want to honor what he has, so whatever we have to do legally to do that, Tom, you help us out. I'm certainly willing to do that. I don't want to prevent you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Medlin. Before you have a motion, I couldn't hear everything that Mayor Flint said, but I think I heard part of it. And I was just going to mention, and I think he may have mentioned, one of the things you could do to address this gentleman's concern, if you're going to be making a motion in favor of this text amendment, would be to recommend a delayed effective date of, say, 4 months. So let's see, July, August, September, October, November, say December the 1st of 2021. And then that gives everybody a time frame of knowing, when he needs to get his site plan submitted. Even if it's not perfect, if he gets it submitted, pays his fees, then he's protected as long as he does it before that deadline, as would anybody else. And then you can always make modifications to a site plan once you've already filed for it and everything. But that should give him some protections and just gives him the window of time that he knows he's got to operate in, as well as anybody else who's in a similar position.
Mr. Bass, Mr. Little, do you think that would be adequate time if, as Mr. Medlin indicated, a December 1st date?
Can I step up again? I don't want you to hold up. I would like that. Yes, that would probably work just fine. Thank you, sir. But that might subject the town to another request during that time period. So I want to ask Mr. Bass, we have limited site information now. Is it possible that we come down tomorrow or Monday, file a preliminary, is this going to do the job or not?
That would not be sufficient, in my opinion, to be an adequate site plan based on the required map standards and payment of fees. We want to be substantial enough to give serious review, and I think that may be that may be a workaround that I'm not comfortable endorsing. I think it should be a little bit more a site plan needs to be pretty detailed and covered. It needs to cover things. It needs to contain drainage plans, watershed requirements, stormwater, environmental health detail, building detail, parking detail. It needs to contain those type details to be a complete application.
Thank you, yes. And they do take a lot of time to get them prepared.
Okay.
I'm not sure 4 months would do it. I would promise you faithfully that the very first minute we get it done, we'll take it down to Auburn, get it over with, because we want that as much as you do. I wonder if January the 1st, given with holidays, Thanksgiving and all that, not even getting people to do work, would be a better time limit.
Okay. Thank
December 1st.
Thank you, sir. I'll make a motion. That motion would be to oppose this text amendment. We would need a second, of course, to move forward.
No second?
It's a second from Mr. Nadell.
No, I said there's no second.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, took the words out of my mouth, sir. Hearing no second, the motion fails.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this text amendment on case STPL 05973.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Flint. We can get to that. Guys, I may be the only one here, but I just sense we're headed down the road to micromanaging small business and private enterprise. I understand the angst of those that have changes in their backyards with various rezonings. One of the reasons I'm a little more comfortable with that is the town does require the buffers and planting yards that we do. But maybe the other board members here feel qualified to determine how many self-storage places there should be in Stokesdale, but I don't feel like I can determine how many drugstores or how many Dollar Generals are appropriate. I think the two self-storage places that we have been discussing here are on a major highway, that being 68. You know, I don't see someone building very many private residences given the traffic on 68. Both of those seem like appropriate locations on that particular corridor, although I certainly accept the concerns that people have when it's next door to them. I favor a diversified economic land use for Stokesdale, that being between industrial and commercial and residential, and I can't support this. If y'all want to vote for it, then so be it. Mr. Green, do you have any comments or questions?
Not to say anything about being for or against. I would like to be sure that, while he's making a motion, I would like to be sure that we do put a date on this.
I had intended asking if anyone wanted to make an amendment to the motion to provide an effective
And it needs
date.
to, I think, go in the motion.
Yeah, we need to do that, but
Well, can I ask for an amendment, maybe that this would not
you need,
come in effective until, say, February 1st, 2022?
February 21st.
February 1st,
Okay.
2022.
Mr. Nadell, would you accept that?
No, I'd like to make a comment. Rewind the last meeting unanimously, this board.
Well,
Well, I'm not willing to accept the date of February because I think it opens up way too much potential, because we're going to be sitting here 7 months from now dealing with potential cases, as the other gentleman mentioned. You know, we just don't know what other cases are going to come forward. I think February is way too long.
Yeah.
And again, just kind of going back, you know, this board was against this unanimously the first time. And I get it that facts change in that, and
that Mr. Nadell, it wasn't unanimous. I voted the other way.
we voted against the last time,
Voted against what, sir?
approving the, as a recommendation, the zoning.
The board did vote
The
against.
council voted, overturned our ruling. But what I'm saying is that.
Yes, sir, you just made a statement to this board's decision
Oh, no,
was
no.
unanimous.
sorry.
That was not the
The
case.
planning board, us as a planning board, voted unanimously to not approve the rezoning. The town council overruled us. Okay, so I just want
Okay,
to make sure I understand that there's some consistency in the thought process among
okay.
us all here.
So what I think I hear from you, Mr. Nadell, is that you do not accept Mr. Green's amendment to your motion.
Correct. I think it's too much time.
Well, would you accept anything less? I don't think 4 months is enough, possibly. You know, we need to be sure that he has enough time to get all of it.
Is there a
everything
way
done.
that we can approve this by letting what's happened in the past, his case, and that's probably a question for the attorney, can we approve this with this gentleman's case that's already in a process? And those, maybe make a motion where cases that are currently, as of this decision, in the works would be exempt from it. You follow what I'm saying? Since he's already started the program of going.
Yeah, I can accept that, yes.
Maybe that's a better way, because that protects the town for anyone else coming in. I don't know if legally if that's something we can do.
Well, we're issuing him a franchise to operate on 68 since we're not going to allow any other self-storage there, so.
But
in a
once we
sense,
put the law in place, it's,
Well, it
Same
depends
kind.
on your point of view.
yeah, well, yeah. I see what you're saying that, but I'm just saying, I'm trying to protect this gentleman, and I'm just afraid we're gonna open up the door, and we're gonna be sitting here hearing more cases down the road. Now, that's an if.
Well, the free market has served Stokesdale well all the way up until this point.
It's fine.
If there's gonna be another request for another mini storage,
We have no choice but to approve it.
yeah, well, yeah, but surely they're already in, it's already in progress because, well, he knows how much time, well, or maybe not, that he's gonna have to get all this stuff put together. You know, I can't picture someone just popping up out of nowhere and starting some work on something and being able to get it finished.
Well, I have a question for Mr. Medlin then.
Yes.
Can we approve this with an exception or some kind of statement that indicates, since this gentleman is already in the process, that he's exempt from it? And that would keep anyone else from coming in later on. I know the chairman is concerned about it being, we're kind of giving him a franchise on the operation, but that does two things. That puts the law in effect, or that puts the regulation in effect, but also protects this gentleman's interest.
I would, what you're talking about is a grandfather type clause that says if you're already rezoned GB or HB, that your right to use self-storage warehousing would be preserved prior to the date of the amendment. But that's going to apply to everybody who's GBHB. And if you've got other places that are already zoned that, then they would be able to put in self-storage because they too are grandfathered. So I would not recommend doing that.
Okay.
I would recommend an effective date that is somewhere down the road. It sounds like y'all are thinking 4 months may not be enough, 5 months might be okay. But if anything else comes in the meantime, it's either got to already be zoned GBHB and they're going to do a site plan, or they're going to have to get it rezoned. And so you would have some control over that timing, having already, made these decisions. And one other thing I think that the town council has up their sleeve is you can always pass a moratorium on any new rezoning request of, GBHB for storage purposes, so that you can kind of put a stop to that if you need be, if that's something you need. But I don't think you're going to need it. I think you kind of know about the cases that are already out there. And if you're just doing a delayed effective date, the one person who's really concerned about it showed up tonight, and you'll be giving him that window of time to get his site plan submitted.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd be willing to work till the end of the year, December 31st. Put that into the motion to make the amendment. And I think that would give it 6 months.
So you're asking to modify your motions until December 31st, 2021?
Correct.
But
Okay.
that would be acceptable.
If that's your effective date, it's easier to make it effective on the first day of a month. other than the last day. I
January
mean, you
1st.
can do it the last day, but
Right. So we can make it January 1st, that's fine.
yeah.
Okay, January 1st, 2022 it is then.
So, Mr. Medlin,
Who seconded your motion, Mr.
Mr.
Nick?
Hamel?
Is he agree to that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, then now your motion is so changed. Go ahead. What was the question?
Mr. Medlin, what recourse does Mr. Little have? Let's just say there are complexities that he runs into when we put this hard date down. What recourse does he have if he runs into an obstacle?
That's kind of a broad question. Oliver Bass might be better equipped to answer that. Off the top of my head, he can either get a site plan basically ready and submit it and pay his fee and then tweak it afterwards if the planning board requires that or if the staff requires it. And then the other always is your worst case scenario. He can come back to you and say, hey guys, I couldn't do it in that time frame. I need light industrial. I'm ready to go now. I need light industrial rezoned with a conditional use or something, which I'm sure y'all would be in favor of trying to help him out with. But that's, like I said, worst case is if you've given him through the end of the year, I'm thinking his surveyor can help him put something together about it.
I'm just
Sure.
want to make sure that we honor honor what we've already approved for him.
And we can't, we don't know what the future is going to be. It may all fall into place. If he doesn't, then he'll come back and talk to Mr. Bass, and if he needs to come back and ask for assistance, he will.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I speak, Mr. Chair?
Everybody else has.
Yeah, so I think if he can get in a reasonable site plan, understanding there may be modifications, once the site plan is submitted, maybe you request at some point that a decision on the site plan be delayed until they make certain corrections. Because the process of a site plan first, it would have to come before the planning board. They will make a approval, recommendation to approve, the decision to approve would get conditions or have them revise and resubmit. But once he submit a site plan with the fees paid, that would kick in the period where he can proceed under the current ordinance in effect. I would, like Tom said, if he wants to come in, establish a conditional zoning. I don't know if that option is available for him at this time, but if he wants to do a conditional zoning that would set it in place as a permitted use, no matter when he submit the site plan, that's an option. That maybe, I don't know if he can submit a second rezoning on within a year though, so that may not be something that he can accomplish. I believe he can do a conditional light industrial, but he's still gonna have the objections. He's gonna have to go through that process. So those are some options available to him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bass. Does the board have any more questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. We've made an amendment to that motion. The effective date of this text amendment would be January the 1st, 2022. If there's no further comment, we'll vote. Mr. Nadell?
Aye.
Mr. Hamel?
Aye.
Mr. Angel?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
And I am nay. Okay. That brings us to our announcements. Any decision of the planning board may be appealed to the Stokesdale Town Council within 15 days of the planning board decision date by contacting the town clerk with a written notice of appeal. There's a $200 per case filing fee. Number two, the Stokesdale Town Council meeting will be on Thursday, August the 12th at 7 p.m. That brings us to the end. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Recording stopped.
Yeah, I'm doing, yeah, just working on